You're listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.
Hi, it's Louisa Tanner Munson, and this is part 9 of the Uranus series, where I look at the effect of having Uranus in your 9th house at birth, and also what might happen if Uranus is transiting through your 9th house. Now, I have to admit, I quite like the Uranian energy going through the 9th house. They seem to have a kind of receptivity. It's a bit like the Uranus in the 5th house. I really like that too, or Uranus in the 3rd house. These houses have got a natural openness, which I think lend themselves perfectly to the kind of expression that Uranus is best suited to. I will say also that it will also suit itself to the 11th house as well. So we're talking 3rd, 5th, 9th and 11th houses as being particularly great ones for Uranus to be in. So what is it about the 9th house that really kind of works nicely for Uranus? Well, the 9th house is one that is associated with a higher mind. So earlier we were talking about the 3rd house, which is to do with like local learning, the kind of knowledge you gain from your early childhood, from early school experiences. So it's not higher learning or higher education. It's kind of standard secondary type of learning, and learning that you need for your early environment. The 9th house is spiritual learning, philosophical learning, legal learning, anything that takes the usual learning and then explores it. The 9th house is a place of exploration. It covers things like publishing. It covers law, because obviously law is exploring boundaries. The 9th house also covers travel, because that's an exploration of ideas, isn't it? And learning about cultures and religions and philosophies. Because when you travel somewhere new, especially if it's exotic and different, it really stimulates a new experience for you, which can change the way you think. It can change your spiritual, religious expression, and it can change your ideas on life and philosophy. So the 9th house is perfect, I think, for the expression of who you are. And Uranus being an unboundaried kind of planetary energy that shakes and disrupts and wakes you up. It's like an environmental factor. It's like a hurricane or a thunderstorm or an earthquake. It leaves things changed. It's not like the sun coming out and then going down at the end of the day. That's kind of part of routine, isn't it? But Uranus energy is it's like a thought form that comes at you and changes the way you see the world forever. So I think that kind of energy in the 9th house is like, bring it on. I'm completely happy with this kind of energy together, because it really matches. There's no real resistance between the Uranus energy and the 9th house energy. Now, the 9th house is traditionally ruled by the sign of Sagittarius. Now, Sagittarius is the sign to do with teaching, but like higher learning teaching, spiritual teaching, religious teaching. It's a sign of religions. It's a sign of philosophies. It's a sign of publishing and books. Find me a Sagittarian that doesn't have a big book collection or a love of, maybe not books now, because I guess books are, for loads of people, books are passé, but Sagittarians love information and knowledge. So actually not information. Information is kind of 3rd house iteration. Knowledge is what you do when you embed and mull over the knowledge. That's what evolves. And that's what Uranus is doing here. It's giving you the opportunity to shock yourself and learn deeply in a new way. It matches really well. So what happens if you've got Uranus in your 9th house? Well, you can probably guess it makes you open-minded, makes you very tolerant of different cultures, races, religions. It could make you deeply religious, or part of a cult, or part of a shocking, religious place. I mean, I know someone who grew up, thanks to her parents, who grew up living alongside a cult, and who had lots of experiences because of that mind view, you would expect to see Uranus in the ninth house for that kind of expression, if that makes sense. Where knowledge was a shocking experience and your life was very, very different in comparison to your peers. It shows that people who are very challenging at school, it's probably because their ninth house Uranus is like, screw school. This is knowledge you're teaching me information. I don't want to know information. I want to know what happens when you apply information. Someone with a Uranus in the ninth house really isn't interested in the kind of lessons you're going to learn early on. They want to know the ramifications of it and what it means when you apply that knowledge, that information, and create something. They want to know what the bigger picture is. So this is a rebellious thinker. This is somebody that's an independent thinker who is a shocking thinker. You might come to think that social philosophers would have a very strong Uranus ninth house energy in their chart. People who talk about one of my favourite social philosophers, and I don't even know, I haven't even looked at his birth chart, but Charles Eisenstein, I do know he's a Sagittarius like me. So he's got a kind of ninth house emphasis. But, the way he looks at equality, which is very much a Uranian theme, and looks at the deeper implications of how we all live together, culturally, with our belief systems, with the environment and governments, and kind of blends them all together. That's very much a ninth house exploration. And it's about exploring the ninth house. So, somebody who can look at all this information and knit it together over many different genres is a ninth house thinker. And I guess a social philosopher, or somebody who is talking about equality and having a more equal and diverse and interesting and adaptable and resilient planet, is somebody who contains those Uranian ideals somewhere at the ninth house level. So, I don't know what Charles Eisenstein's I have no idea what his chart looks like. I would like to look at it, and I think I might have to just contact him and let him know that I've mentioned him in this podcast. But he's just an example of somebody I like. But there are loads of different commentators out there about ninth house issues. And I would imagine someone with a very strong Uranus, or a Uranus in the ninth house, or a Uranus in Sagittarius, would be somebody who would want to comment on the world, who would want to participate in this kind of way and sew together all the themes and help other people expand on their small information and turn that into practical knowledge. So this is somebody who could be a mystic, could be a guide, could be a guru, but this is somebody who has the charisma and the appeal to change the world through ideas. It's a very, very special position, I think, a ninth house Uranus. Wow, I've inspired myself now just talking about how awesome people like that are. Anyway, what would happen if Uranus is about to travel through your ninth house? Well, this is the kind of thing that could coincide with a life-changing decision to travel or to move or emigrate, to live amongst a different culture, a different language, a different religious background, a different kind of ethics system. This is somebody who is about to encounter difference and individuality in their life and give meaning to it, so take the information of what it means to live with a new set of guidelines and then add in the context of their own meaning, and then they get the knowledge of it. So it's somebody whose life is going to change and open, but not in an unhelpful way. Uranus in the ninth house is a great beneficial kind of planetary wave that happens to you. I don't see it as something that's really negative. It's something it's quite beautifully positive, because it's encouraging your life to expand and flow and get more tolerant and to mature. But, not in the kind of, I'm going to become a old fogey stick in the mud and become belligerent with my views. I'm talking mature into being wise. It's about wisdom. There you go. That's the word that I was groping for in the dark there. It's wisdom. So Uranus going through your ninth house is a chance for wisdom and a chance for a shocking new insight into what life is about. Now, if we think that Uranus goes into the ninth house after it's been in the eighth house, then we get a bit of a context as to how this might have happened. So if your life has evolved, like the eighth house Uranus like transit is about going from one life stage to another. So again, it really largely depends as to what stage of life you're at. For instance, Uranus in the eighth house could, like when it's transiting through the eighth house, could coincide with going through the change or the menopause, or, you know, transitioning from your kids leaving home, for you finding freedom. It could be about transitioning from being of working age to retiring. You know, if we go with those kinds of things, then you might be talking about a time when there's more money available to you, or if you've just lost a parent and you've inherited something, or you've cashed in your loans, you've sold your house and you have more resources. So the eighth house is very much about resources, and Uranus going through that shows that recently you revalued your resources and you had some surprising changes in your resources. And often when people have a difference and a change in their resources, then they think, how can I spend it? How can I evolve? And, you know, people often travel, you know, after they've retired or sold a house or gained some capital or something like that, or if they change jobs and they get a pay rise, or if they get married, i.e. go from being single to being married, they go on a honeymoon. Travel often coincides with money changes and changes in your life stage. It seems to be one of the ways that people like to celebrate life. And, you know, retired people often have big holidays. So they go from, you know, just having little holidays locally or maybe a couple of countries away. I'm really talking, you know, for us Europeans, because it's so easy for us to sort of like fly out to a different country. But people, when they get to retirement age, if suddenly they've got more money and their resources have increased, then all of a sudden, you know, you see all these people in their late 60s, 70s, going to the Bahamas, going to the Caribbean, going on lifelong tours and, you know, doing these really challenging things. But the ninth house travel is about expanding the mind, seeing a different way of life. So very, very good. And of course, our life can change in other ways. You know, it might not be that we have extra resources from Uranus going through our eighth house. The eighth house is about life and death. It could be that you had a strong illness, or have been caring for somebody who's been dying, or caring for somebody who is going into a different stage of their life. In those cases, if you can't physically travel, people travel through the mind. So the ninth house is also associated with books and studying and higher education. So it could be that this is marking a time when you're travelling in your mind. It could be marking a time when you're getting into yoga or meditation and healing in a different place. But it shows lifelong learning, some kind of exploration. And that's where I'm going to leave it here. Anything's possible, because obviously when we're looking at birth charts, you know, and what might be about to occur for somebody, we're not ever just looking at one planet. You know, I wouldn't look at a client's chart and say, oh, you've got Uranus about to go in the ninth house, this is what's going to happen. You know, I'd be reading your chart and seeing that ninth house Uranus is going on, but at the same time, Pluto might be on your sun and your progressed moon might be on your ascendant. You know, all of those different planetary changes and interactions spell a different story. So all we're doing here is giving you some of the themes around a story that might come into fruition. And I guess as you continue to learn and continue listening to these podcasts, to really be able to embed the energies of the planets in all the different houses and compare it to your charts and compare it to the charts of your friends and your family, over time, you'll be able to build up these stories about what's happening and really learn to find the meaning in life that might be happening to you, has happened to you, but might be about just around the corner. So you can start planning if that's helpful. Really odd that I mentioned the word planning when I'm talking about Uranus, but anyway, that's another story. So hopefully that's food for thought. And I'd love to hear of your own explorations and experiences of Uranus in the ninth house. I'd love to. So let me know if you have gone through one of those. As ever, just stay in contact. Just give me a buzz, drop me a line. Hope this has been useful. Thank you so much for listening.
You've been listening to Feel Good Astrology with Louisa Tanner Munson, and this recording has been made possible by all you lovely supporters at Patreon. To request a personal reading with Louisa, go to www.feelgoodastrology.com.